All right. Last summer, I was able to go to Maui for the second time. Going back a second time with my family, I was able to do some activities that I didn't get the chance to do the previous time. And one of those things was snorkeling in a beautiful place called Hanuma Bay. And this landmark is known for attracting thousands of tourists each year because of the many fish that are present in its waters. But vast isn't exactly a word I would use to describe that, but more along the lines of extremely minimal. And this isn't just happening in Hawaii with all these small amounts of fish, but also in many places of the world. And to put it in a big picture, it's something called overfishing. Overfishing is essentially, plain and simply, where fishing companies, known as fisheries, take too many fish out of the ocean that nature can reproduce. And as a marine biology major, this is something that's very true to my research and study that I hope to do someday. And being in an oceanography class presently, I've been studying this topic for about a month now, collecting background data on what causes this issue. So some of you may fish, some of you may snorkel, scuba dive, such things. So you guys can understand where I'm coming from, but others may not do those things. But did you guys know that overfishing doesn't just affect fish, it also affects species such as birds, sea turtles, and sharks. I mean, who doesn't want to see a sea turtle eventually when they're older? So today, I would like to talk to you more about this major issue and persuade you guys to be more conscientious about fisheries and how they are a major concern for the environment, as well as what we can do on our part to protect species for future generations. So the first thing I would like to do is talk more about overfishing and look what it does to the ocean from a natural perspective. So basically what I said before, overfishing occurs where fishing companies, fisheries, take more fish out of the ocean than can be reproduced by nature. And so basically it's the simple fact that there are too many fishing companies for the amount of fish present. So an analogy I kind of like to use, and which is kind of relevant to this past week, is Black Friday. Us, the fishing company, or the consumers, we go to these stores trying to look for that 50-inch flat screen TV for $200. And so those TVs are the fish. And so we're buying all these TVs up until there's none left, and eventually they're extinct in a sense. So those fishing companies are driving those fish almost to extinction. And from a site called Mother Jones, in an article called Not Enough Fish in the Sea, in the second half of the 20th century, ocean fishermen increased their catch 400% by doubling the number of boats and using more effective fishing gear. In 1989, the world's catch leveled off at just 82 million metric tons of fish per year, which is all the ocean can produce. So back in 1989, we were already fishing more than we should be fishing. And that's kind of a startling fact, I think, that we're just not doing things right. Another fact is there are just too many fish being taken out of the ocean, plain thing of overfishing. From the Monterey Bay Aquarium on an article called Wild Seafood, today 90% of the world's fisheries are either fully exploited, overexploited, or have collapsed. So again, we're just taking way too many fish that need to be taken out of the ocean. So we need to pull back, I believe, and let those fish reproduce. Again, when we take so many fish out, we're driving these fish to extinction. So again, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA for short, they say that unfortunately under this high fishing pressure throughout the latter part of the 20th century, U.S. stocks of Atlantic cod came close to a commercial collapse in the mid-1900s. So again, it's the basic fact that we're just taking too many fish for what we have, driving cod almost to extinction. So now that we have this idea of what overfishing is and what it can do to a species, let's see what overfishing does to our oceans. When fisheries constantly overfish a certain species, those fish aren't just the only fish that are affected, like I said before. There's a thing called bycatch, and what it is when a fishing company or a boat catches fish, they tend to not only catch the fish that they want, but also unwanted things, such as sea turtles, sharks, and even seabirds. Um, from wild seafood again, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, some of the biggest offenders are shrimp fisheries. In the worst cases, for every pound of shrimp caught, up to 6 pounds of other species are discarded. I mean, that's crazy, right? We're taking sea turtles or sharks or what have you, and they're being caught and just throwing them back out, already dead. Unwanted death. Another thing is that we're habitat destruction. There's these things that fishing companies do, and it's called trawling, where they basically plow the bottom of the seafloor just to get some fish. And again, from wild seafood, in many areas, marine life and seafloor communities have no chance to recover. Parts of the North Sea off Denmark have been trawled up to 400 times a year. So basically, we're plowing the bottom of the ocean like 400 times a year, killing so many things just so we can get some measly fish. I don't think that's cool. I mean, but also when we take so many fish out, obviously the numbers are decreasing, and so fishing companies, they'll start to take things that shouldn't be taken out. So sharks, for example, and illegal fishing, right? So gill nets are sometimes known as the wall of death. One found in 2012 dropped 30 feet down and had caught 17 greater hammerhead sharks and many other species of fish. An article by the Houston Chronicle called "Illegal Fishing of the Rise in Gulf of Mexico." So these giant nets are basically just a wall and catching so many sharks that those sharks are now being endangered because of this. So even with all this negative information coming from overfishing, I believe there's still some hope left. Many organizations have devoted their time and their resources to giving the public emphasis and education on what we can do on our own part to fix and help these fishing companies not make a giant impact on the oceans. Such as like SeaWorld or the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they give interaction for people to understand what these fishing companies do and also what the fish do. And so we, as a consumer, are able to put pressure on the providers that, this is fish that we need to keep. We don't want to kill these things. So to sum it all up, I've talked about what we can do as people to help these fishing companies not make such a detrimental impact on the environment, what overfishing is, and what it does to the environment. Something I like to think about is in the story, famous Dr. Seuss story, The Lorax. The Onceler was a greedy man who only wanted he wanted to make those needs, and he did that by cutting down the truffle tree. And the Lorax was the guy that represented nature. And what basically it was saying is that these fishing companies are the ones that we're cutting down measly trees, and eventually we're going to run out of those things. And I think it's important that we all take part in being mindful of what needs to be done to protect these fish. Thank you.
They have 10 minutes, by the way, not 8.
They have 10?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. It's 8 to 10 minutes, so they should start with 10. And
So I should start counting after what?
yeah, 5 minutes. After they've spoken 5 minutes, show them the 5 minutes after that. All right. Didn't turn out to be a big deal in this particular situation. Okay, let's see. Janina, what did you think? Yeah, but you have to speak up a little, even though he's close.
So, I like how you started with your speech. It gives us an overview of how you connect and care about your topic, which is important. And it shows throughout your speech that you do care about what is going on in the fisheries or what you want to be done. And I like how you related it to the audience, even though like I don't fish, so I think that was a good idea. And I like the use of your analogy. I thought it connected well with your topic. And one thing is that you looked at your would kind of peek onto the, what is that called? Podium, and maybe you should maybe more cards or just hold it. But it wasn't a big thing because he mostly used it for evidence to support the topic, which he had a lot of. And I thought I spoke confidently, and I didn't see any anxiety. And I like the conclusion class.
All right. I'll agree with a lot of those things. I like the introduction a lot. I thought that was very clear. It's pretty clear where you're going. It takes you a couple minutes to get there, but you do identify a purpose. I think the solution at the end of the speech needs to be a little bit more developed. The idea that SeaWorld and the aquariums are going to teach us enough that we'll be able to do something about this. I think that's a little bit problematic. You know, it might make sense, for instance, if people who do the fisheries impose some voluntary limits on what their take is, or they created seasons, for instance, for the fish and said, you know, we're only going to, you know, harvest these fish once every other year or something like that. I mean, there's got to be some kind of creative proposal that allows that industry to continue to exist, but also allows the fish to thrive. It just seems like that's not really explained very well, other than we should be aware of it, which I thought that you did a good job on that part, convincing us that it's important. I also thought that you did a very nice job providing statistical information at the right spot and some pieces of testimony here and there, so there's good evidence in your argument fairly consistently. Janina's pointed out the delivery issue that you probably knew was going to come. I can tell you were probably a day away from having the speech all set and not having to rely on the notes at all, because you do sound like you know the topic. You do speak confidently. Most of the time you are just talking to us, but every minute or so you got to step forward and kind of peek at that information there just to remind yourself of what the quote is or who it is you're citing at that particular point. And I thought you did it with a reasonable amount of discretion. There were a couple of times when you look like you're leaning over and focusing on it a little longer than you want. I think the sidelong glance, and maybe kind of craning your neck a little bit. That's okay if it happens maybe 3 times during the speech, but it happens a little more than you want. I do think it's better than having the script in your hands and waving that around. It might have been a good alternative, for instance, to have them on note cards and then just have the 4 note cards in your hands so that and don't look at them until you have to, and that would still allow you to be engaged. It's a tough choice to make in that situation, which is the better option in these circumstances. I thought you made a pretty good choice there, and like I said, if you'd had another day or so, it looks like you probably would have been spot on and hardly even had to think about looking at those kinds of things. So that's a good job. Thank you.